Welcome in to another episode of the Q Crew. I'm back with one of my favorite co-hosts. It's been a while. I apologize for that. I was busy being depressed and then eventually getting my life together. So we have not recorded, I think, like a year and a half. But Colin Wright, how's it going, Big Colin?
It's good. I appreciate you having me back on. Big question. Did you get your life together, though?
As much as my life could be together, it's like my version of success story. Don't compare me to actual successful people, but if you can compare me to my old self, I'm on fire right now.
There you go.
So we're here to talk about a couple of big movies. We figured with wanting to get together and talk about movies and TV shows. Obviously, TV shows can take a little while, and I'm planning to do a little Tiger King podcast with my co-host from the Make It Mark Wrestling show. If they can figure it out, we're all depressed because this was supposed to be WrestleMania weekend, and it's become like two weird audience-less shows, and we've just been sad, and we forgot, like they forgot this was the weekend for the show. So I was like, you guys want to record Tiger King on Saturday? And they're like, yeah, let's do it at 7. I'm like, that's like the first night when WrestleMania starts. They're like, wait, oh crap. And so we had to reschedule, and I still don't know when we're going to do it. But on the other side, in terms of movies, there's a lot of stuff I've been wanting to watch. There's been stuff I was hoping to be able to talk with you about. And you just always, your laundry list of movies makes me feel like worthless. It makes me feel like I don't actually enjoy movies because I never take the time. It's like I see them all, I hear all the buzz, I'm like, that's cool, and then never make it out. You send me your best of 2020 where we've been shut down, stuck in our homes. Movie theaters are one of the first casualties of this pandemic. And you send me a list of like 20 movies I've already watched this year. And I'm like, I have not been to the movie theater this calendar year. I don't know how you pulled it off. I might never get to go again. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in the world. Colin, tell me about how you were able to keep going and watch all these movies all the time.
The overwhelming majority was in January and February, before things kind of got flipped upside down in March. But I will say this, the final Friday that movie theaters were still open, I guess like a few weeks ago, I saw 2 movies in the same day in theaters. And so that kind of helped the list a little bit.
So you caused the outbreak is what you're telling me?
It was probably debatable if I needed to be in public or not at a movie theater, but I went anyway because there was movies I wanted to see. And so here we are. But so I've seen a handful this year, and the movies we're going to talk about are pretty high up on the list. I won't say where just yet, but I was a big fan of some of the things that I've seen. And I think that so I'll just say this, my favorite movie I've seen this year, I know it technically came out last year, was Parasite. I saw that in theaters and really enjoyed it. But I've also seen some trash movies, and I'm typically a fan of horror, and I don't need like a lot to be entertained. But if all of your characters suck and your writing sucks, then I can lose interest pretty easily. So,
yeah, in horror movies, like I'm trying to think of like stuff. It just feels like nothing has been like new and fresh. Other than, we hit most of them. We went and we watched Hereditary, we watched Killing of Sacred Deer, and then I'm trying to think, the most recent one that got me excited, and it was also from A24, was Midsummer, and it was fresh and awesome, but it also was just Wicker Man kind of redone, not in a rip-off way. It was an homage more than anything, but there isn't a lot with horror movies, and it was so weird because I do have that kind of like growing up watching a lot of horror movies, but just haven't really done that lately. But if there's a good one, I'm 100% in, and we knocked those out. That was the first ones we did when we were podcasting together. And then you send me your list, and I do need to knock out Parasite. I need to throw it on and see what's up, because it's just so many positive things. But honestly, I need to basically go back to that director's entire career, because I haven't even watched Snowpiercer yet. So there's a lot for me to catch up on, and I wish I actually had more time during this pandemic, but I might actually have less. I'm able to get more work done remotely, and so I'm working all the time. But I think when I wanted to pick a movie and you gave me the list, 2 jumped out because they were ones I really wanted to see, and I was actually sad that I wasn't able to go see them. But in a strange twist of fate, the stay-at-home orders, the movie theater shutting down, has actually pushed a lot of these media companies to get these movies out faster and sometimes cheaper. And Uncut Gems was on Amazon Prime for $2.99 with their like 4K version of the movie. So I was like, I'm in. The way back was a little bit tougher for me. I had to bite the bullet for a $20 purchase of the movie because it was early access, because that movie got shut down early in its run based on all these movie theaters shutting down. And they were like, all right, how do we recoup the losses? How do we figure out how to make this work? And they're getting it out there onto Amazon. And I was like, well, I do want to watch it. It's for a multitude of reasons, but I also figured, hey, this is a moment where we've lost sports. We've lost movies. Let's watch some really good sports movies and podcast about it. And I think it was a really good choice. I said this before we came on. I'm pretty sure I'm going to screw up this podcast because I'm pretty darn excited to talk about these two movies. And it's weird because I probably shouldn't have watched them under the game plan of talking about them and judging them, because, Uncut Gems was one that had a lot of fanfare going in. Like, there were a lot of people, especially when it didn't get the Oscar nominations, a lot of people were talking about it as getting snubbed. And I'm the contrarian. Once people say it's really good, it better actually be really good, because I'm going to come in and rip it apart. That's my role on this earth, is to check people and make sure that there's a correction whenever people go a little bit too far with their praise of stuff. And then the way back, just for the fact that the movie mirrors what's happening in Ben Affleck's life enough that there's supposed to be a realism to it. And when it's a basketball movie that is done well, and that's what was, kind of more than anything, that was kind of the reviews coming out, is a basketball movie done really, really well. And there hasn't been a great sports movie in a while other than Creed. Like, it's kind of crazy. They've all kind of gotten into that formula, and I guess comedies have kind of done the same thing recently. It's the same movie, and they're not bad, but there's nothing there. There's nothing different. And so if you've seen one, you've seen them all. And if you get one that's good, I was like, gotta watch it. And on that side, definitely nailed it. I'm going to come in with some hot takes eventually and start talking about some of the things, a little bit of nitpicks, but I'm going to talk about it. Starting out, Colin, I just want to hear your picks, because you put them pretty high on your list. You had a lot of movies. I'm comparing them to just me being an asshole and how do I tear people down for things they like. You have a list of this being pretty high up, and it's compared to a lot of good movies you've already got to see. What stood out about these two films?
Yeah, so I was a big fan of Uncut Gems. And here's the thing, I enjoy award shows. I'm going to watch the Oscars, the Golden Globes. And when it comes to the awards, I don't care who wins. I just care who gets nominated. Like, whatever. Once you have like 5 or 6 people that are nominated, they're all really, really good. And they did a fantastic job. So whoever wins, I don't care about. But I was a little disappointed that Adam Sandler did not get a nomination for Best Actor. I would love to see get nominated for Best Picture. But I thought I liked a lot of things about Uncut Gems. I thought the Safdie brothers really created something that was original. When I go see a movie, one of the first things that I try to experience is I like to feel something. And I felt very anxious during Uncut Gems, and that's a compliment. Like, I was super uncomfortable, especially the pacing of the movie was great. The music was great, but it kind of crescendos into a last half hour where you are just like uncomfortable in your seat. Like, as Sandler's like a gambling addict and is gambling his literally life away. And then he has this one last chance effort if he can get the bet with the Celtics and the tip, and Garnett with the points and rebounds. And I really enjoyed, obviously, the cameos. I think Kevin Garnett did a great job, first of all. I've always liked KG as a player, so it's fun to see him do something a little different. But also, there's a scene with The Weeknd, kind of like 2012, before The Weeknd blows up, that I thought they did a really great job of showing him at a nightclub where The Weeknd probably could have been in 2012. And so some really nice pieces they put together, and I don't know. I was not disappointed. The movie was already over 2 hours. It could have gone another hour. I was just sucked in. Like, once it wins me over, I'm in. I'm invested. So.
So yeah, with Uncut Gems, I thought I'll first talk to your point about the pacing that was pretty amazing. I thought even more so than the pacing was that it was a story that was focused on a level of realism. That's actually something that keeps in common with The Way Back. Like their goal of taking real people and presenting them, and each movie had like a different way into that, because with Uncut Gems, obviously things ramp up and get crazy, and so it's like, how do you maintain a level of realism? The main thing is Adam Sandler as this junkie, gambling addict jeweler, not junkie, but gambling junkie. Uh, this this character that he is like, I don't know. I don't know what the percentage is, but 50% him, 50% that guy. And Adam Sandler has grown up around them enough to have met that guy and knows him. And then he took the time to go and kind of talk with all the different jewelers that are kind of in that role. So Adam Sandler just puts it together in a way that that character is so real. It didn't matter what crazy things happen. It maintained that sense of realness that the Safdie brothers just, they're so good at it. And part of it is, where I wanted to be negative about this. You talk about Adam Sandler kind of, getting snubbed. And the big thing for me is I don't think that like Adam Sandler is a great actor. Like I think he's had a handful of really good performances when he has done different dramatic roles, but there are weird moments in Adam Sandler movies where you see him be bad at acting or bad at parts of acting. And I just know that like it was an amazing performance, but I still wouldn't, like, if I'm going down the list, I don't know who to kick off of lead actors to say you don't deserve it and Adam Sandler did better acting than you did. Like who's in the top list? We got Adam Driver, you got Leonardo DiCaprio, Antonio Banderas in Pain and Glory, Joaquin Phoenix and Joker, which I think is the one people kept wanting to attack. There kind of was this last minute revolt against the movie. I disagreed. I understood where people were coming from, but I thought particularly with the way Phoenix was able to create this person with a mental illness and deliver it in such a way that even when the movie got a little bit more cartoonish, he still stayed true to that character. I don't know. Jonathan Pryce and Two Popes. I don't know who you knock off to throw in. So I don't feel like he really got snubbed. And that I only am coming in with the negative for Adam Sandler to make sure people keep it in context. He did an amazing job in this movie, and the movie is entirely on him. The Safdie brothers put together a really smart film, but it is a character piece. If Adam Sandler doesn't deliver, it doesn't work. And they not only, normally with Adam Sandler, I think what he's good at and you kind of play to his strengths, you hide his weaknesses. They said, screw that. It's a movie called Uncut Gems. We are going to figure out his negatives, and we're actually going to incorporate that into the movie. That's his flaws as a person, as an actor, can be his flaws as a character. And they find a way to bring that realism in that works so well. And the best way to do it, the whole movie is realism. These aren't there's only a handful of people that are extremely experienced actors in this movie. When you look at Kevin Garnett as one of the major players on the other side, like he comes in and he nails it. But there's also a level that he's not acting; he's just Kevin Garnett, and that brings a realism. The jewelers are actual jewelers that the Safdie brothers met while they were scouting locations and figuring these things out. His bookie is Mike Francesca, and they bring in this New York sports radio personality. At this point, he might even be bigger than he's ever been, based on how bull crap his takes are when they go online. And it's like he's not even watching anymore. He's so wrong. It's a performance art that is great, and they bring him in and they tell him to just basically respond to Adam Sandler. We're not giving you a script. Respond to him how you would an angry caller. And it's beautiful because it totally works. The underacting, the way that they just don't try to overdo it, actually benefits everybody, and it benefits Adam Sandler, who is the focal point of this movie. And like I said, instead of there being these flaws to him, just like the Black Opal, Adam Sandler is worth so much money, and it's because of his flaws he brings it to the table. And I always root for Adam Sandler because as much as he's gotten to the point now where he's just bigger than everything, he's made so much money, and Netflix just keeps pushing his bank account ever higher. He still just seems like an awkward guy that doesn't feel like he's in the right spot. Like, he's still just like, am I supposed to be here? Does this work? You know? And I love watching Adam Sandler go on press tours. I love him talking with, the Brad Pitts of the world. And then, I think he told a story about how Daniel Day-Lewis called him afterwards and just telling how he was like grabbing the front of the seat when he was in the theater because Adam Sandler was doing so good in the movie. And it's things like that. So I don't want to work on the negatives. I do want to make it clear that it's like, there are things about his acting, even in this movie, that don't quite add up. And if I'm going to put him mano a mano, we're going to turn it into a competition. I can't get mad at the Oscars. They've made a lot more worse decisions, and this year, than Adam Sandler not getting put into the lead actor nomination. But he did do an amazing job, and he deserves all the accolades he gets because this is a movie that rests on his shoulders. He has to pull through, and he makes it his own. He pulls it off, and you're right. It was a great time, especially you thought this type of movie could kind of like lose its steam in the middle, and instead it built up to a crescendo that by the end, we're not. I don't know how much spoilers to do. I assume nobody's going to listen to this that hasn't watched the movie, but the finish was also great because it was just real. Like,
you're right.
As it's happening, I'm like, wait, where is this going to go? Because this is a dumb plan. Like, for once again, if anybody came here to listen for us to talk about this and didn't think spoilers were happening, you're an idiot, but also be an idiot that skips 10 minutes ahead because I'm going to jump into it right now. Adam Sandler's character is this, as we mentioned earlier, a jeweler that is also a gambling addict. This movie is a comedy of errors, as every time he tries to make that big bet and win, things get in his way. Even the moment where he thought he made the big bet and won, because of all his stupid plans, the bet gets cut by the guy he owes money, and he doesn't get to make the money. And he just keeps going, even if you think the normal person would walk away. But the realism of it is gamblers never walk away. They never stop when they need to, or in this case, stop before you get killed. This all leads up to the final scene where he sees the perfect opportunity. He can't pass it up. He should. He's got his money. He can pay off the bookie. He will live. There are 3 moments where he can survive, but just like when he's talking to his wife, who is played by Elsa from Frozen, I'm not even going to say what her real name is, but he's talking to her, and I think he says something along the lines of, like trying to ask for her to get back with him, and he's seen that it's not working. He's like, this is kind of over, isn't it? And that's the whole rest of the movie is kind of like, it's over. I might as well go for it. This is the only thing I do. That's the only thing I really know. And so when he goes for that final bet, he knows Kevin Garnett's going to do well because he just got the black opal. He sold it to him. Now I'm going to use the money that I sold the gym to know that I'm putting it on Kevin Garnett. I'm putting it on the Celtics. I'm making this work. And when he has to lock the mobsters into the like doors that are locked to protect the jewelry store, it doesn't matter how long they're in there. They're going to come out and kill you. Like, I knew that going in, so I was worried if they wouldn't stay real. And sadly, but also good for the movie, they did. And that finish, like, you felt the rush of what it was like to be a gambler throughout the movie. And obviously not all gambling stories end in getting shot in the head by a mobster that you pissed off. But the way that the feeling, the non-literal version of how we felt watching this scenario play out is literally what happens when you start betting on people and when you can't stop and you're like, I lost that one, but this one I know. This one I'm going to get. And the way they nailed that feeling more so than anything else is why this movie, I think, we'll definitely look back on in a couple of years and be like, damn, this was really, really good.
Yeah, as a rookie sports bettor that gets a rush from putting $10 on an NFL parlay, and you get the first 3 legs right, and you know that if you just need one more cover, that the movie did a really good job of portraying, like, you're right, he was so caught up in gambling that he wasn't going to get out. They don't walk away when they should. It was mistake after mistake after mistake, and they really painted a really strong picture. I thought as someone who's a fan of radio hosts and freezing cold takes, I thought Mike Francesa being on there was fantastic. Because I enjoyed that more than I'd like to admit. That was pretty funny. But going back to the Oscar nomination, I will say this, and this is coming from someone who loves Adam Driver. His performance in Marriage Story was like the third best in that movie. So me personally, I would knock him off and give it to Sandler. But shout out Laura Dern and Scarlett Johansson because they were great in that movie. But I thought Driver was just average. But that's just me. So.
I disagree. I think while there were so many good performances, I can't yell at you for saying that one of the other ones should have been higher. But I think just the scene that everybody's turned into a meme was so good that I don't know how you could say Adam Driver was, just so. Like that was the most important scene of that movie, and he nailed it. It was like, if we're going to compare scenes, Adam Driver breaking down while having that fight with his wife that he should have had way before they got divorced. I think he nailed that, as well as Adam Sandler is nailing. Which one do we think is the better scene? Him convincing Kevin Garnett that, I guess he's not even at that point trying to work him to sell him, but he is doing the sales pitch, and you see him in his element, telling him how awesome this black opal is. Or is it when he gets the money from Kevin Garnett and you see in his eyes he's not taking the way out, he's going down that destructive path, and he's going to make that bet? Either way, if I'm picking one, I love what Adam Sandler did, but I'm going with Adam Driver's performance. I'm going with that scene in Marriage Story.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I just thought that the other two kind of overshadowed Driver a little bit, but he was really good. So I just thought that Sandler did something that I just have never seen him do before. Like, not so much in the serious role. I just mean like his personality and his character felt so real throughout the whole movie that I thought it was really good. I think that Uncut Gems, something that stuck with me, like, as I walked out of the theater and went home and went through my next few days, was like the music, the sound. Like, they do a couple like really zoomed in close-ups of like the opal, and kind of that's obviously like a larger analogy, but I just thought like the sound and like the way that they created the whole movie, I don't know. I like getting sucked in, and this really, it did it early on for me. And like you mentioned earlier, it doesn't kind of have any moments in the middle where it kind of starts to linger off in a way you don't want it to go. It actually gets better throughout the movie. Yeah. So that's a big sign, because I don't have any like great examples. I know recently I've seen movies where like the last 30 to 45 minutes they do the other thing. They actually get worse. This one I thought got better. So that kind of helped. I think the reason why I overall enjoyed it so much was because it got better throughout the movie, leading up to that final scene where you don't want it to happen, because you find yourself rooting for someone that's not very likable, that doesn't treat his family that well, that doesn't treat his friends that well. But there's a forgiving quality there where you want him to be successful and you want him to win this parlay.
That's because you're him.
It's like,
that's because we are all flawed people. We are all uncut gems. And even though we watch it, it's sort of like when people connect with characters like Michael Scott and, whatever these like awful people are in shows. And part of it is that as much as you see that negative and you want to be the better character, I guess the better one, I think The Ringer's been doing their like best TV characters. And there was this really great article. God, now I feel bad because I'm going to forget what her name is. Allison. I forget what her last name is, but she wrote this thing on Pete Campbell from Mad Men. And it was so great because it's so true. When you watch Mad Men, most men want to be Don Draper. And even as the series goes along, most people keep watching and somehow don't realize he's an awful person. And you watch Pete Campbell, and I think 90% of people just know from the get-go he's just not a good guy. But by the end of the show, Pete Campbell you are rooting for, and you're like, wait, why? Why do I want Pete Campbell to be successful, getting back with Trudy and going off and doing whatever? And the truth of it is, we are closer to Pete Campbell's than we are to Don Draper's. Very few of us have that skill set. None of us are on that level, but we all want to be, and we all like to imagine we're the leads in movies. And so when you have something like this where the lead character would normally be a side character, like Adam Sandler's character, you could just imagine him showing up as a cameo in some random other movie, right? Like he's got that nailed down, and in 5 minutes he can make a scene work, but like he's the side guy. And to watch him, to watch his flaws, and for you to get to be there with him, and you're thinking, you are feeling it. It's like maybe we're not all terrible people that are going to cheat on their wife and go and sleep with the jewelry store lady that, like we're hopefully better people than that, but we all make some kind of mistake. And so if we sit there and think he's awful and whatever, but no, we connect at some point because we've all been there. We've all been stuck in over our heads. And so you're watching and you're feeling it with him, and you get to the end of the movie, and hopefully we have better ends than that. Hopefully we stop at the moment KG hands us 100 and some grand. Hopefully. Probably not. We're not smart either. We'll probably keep going and never give up. But it's that character flaw, which I think, once again, that's where I think as a movie, I'm willing to say that Adam Sandler's kind of limited range works because he's playing this one character perfectly, and they follow him around and it fits into this movie. And that's why the movie is so great. If I'm going to go with like individual performance, I can't honestly say that Adam Sandler is better than any of the people we named. And this is some groundbreaking role that we're going to look back. We're going to have film kids studying how Adam Sandler did this, because nothing he did is going to apply to anybody else. This is one role for Adam Sandler, meant for him, wrote by the Safdie brothers 10 years ago for him. And apparently just every 5 years they send it to his agent, and Adam Sandler's agent's like, screw this. We're not doing this. And then I don't even know what it took for Adam Sandler to finally get on board. But this was meant for him, and it was perfect. It went so well. It used whatever flaws he did have to be part of the movie. So I really enjoyed it. Really great. Once again, I don't mean to try to keep poking at it, because honestly, the longer I sit with it, I'm praising it more now at the end, is why I'm prepping for this podcast, than I originally thought when the movie cut to the end. I really enjoyed it at that point, but the more I thought about it and the more I sat with it, it is really good. It's one that I'm interested to see that, in a couple months, will I want to go back and like rewatch that and sit through it and like notice all the little things. Cause some of these movies, they're not rewatchable, like they're great the one time. Like I'm not going to go back and watch 12 Years a Slave. Just not going to happen ever. That doesn't take away from how good the movie was, but just not going to happen. This one will be interesting to see which camp it falls into, whether it's something that I am sitting there and like I have 2 hours to spend. Oh yeah, let's watch Adam Sandler tear it up in this movie. I think it might, but we'll have to see. The other movie that we're here to talk about, The Way Back. Wait, actually, before we get there, I did want to say, you brought up The Weeknd. There was a moment that I was sitting there and I was like, oh, they're just pretending that they had to pick 2012 for Kevin Garnett's big series against the Sixers. Like, you know what this actually is? This is to get The Weeknd in before he's famous. Like, that's why they picked 2012. They're liars. No, but it was great to have them there. That they played that so perfectly, and I just love how they didn't overdo it. There's not this really long time with The Weeknd where you start to like question the reality of these characters. Is this a real situation? It's very quick. There's a fight. They break it up, and if it went any longer, Adam Sandler's getting his jaw broken now, instead of by mobsters, by The Weeknd's posse. And so I'm just glad that and it's something we'll end up talking about with The Way Back, so this might be a pretty good transition. The ability to take situations that I don't think are surprising. I think we've seen them in movies before, but we often see them as these tropes that fall apart the longer they sit in the scene. The director, the Safdie brothers for Uncut Gems, and then I forget, is it Gavin O'Connor is the Way Back director?
Yeah,
they are really good at finding a way to take those same scenes and do them better, do them right, get out while you're ahead, and make it where this is a scene that helps the movie without us sitting there and thinking, well, that's just dumb. Like that's not how this would play out at all. And so now as we switch to The Way Back, that is probably the best part about this movie is, we were talking earlier about good sports movies and they don't exist. They're very formulaic. Everything in this movie, I mean, it does get a little bit convoluted with the story in terms of how Ben Affleck's character, Jack Cunningham, is this former high school basketball phenom who is now an alcoholic construction worker who's in the middle of a divorce. And we're like, wait, how did we get here? And the movie doesn't tell you much, and it just starts to build and build. And I would kind of make the argument it maybe adds too many things, but those things. And once you get to the point of him becoming okay, the father of the Catholic high school he went to comes in, asks him to come back and be the coach because they've not had a winning season, they've not gone to the playoffs since he played there 20 years ago. They bring him in, and you can see all of the classic styles of this movie. I think the joke running around is this was white Coach Carter, which is funny, but it's not really true, other than the fact that this movie does take what is a normal setup for a sports movie. It takes all of the ideas, when you look at the main interactions with the kids on the team, you got this womanizing showboat of a sharpshooter. You got the dancing jokester and Chubbs. You got the kid who gets kicked off the team because he's not listening to the coach in practice, and then he has to come back and apologize and find any way, let me back on the team, coach, please. And then you have like the father of the kid who is really good at basketball, but he doesn't want his kid to play basketball. These are tried and true stories that are done so often, they don't mean anything to us anymore. This movie found a way to do all of them, and in a way that worked. Like, they let it happen. They made sure it was part of the movie. You felt that kind of like connection. Like, it was like nostalgia to all those types of movies you watched growing up. But it also made those stories real. Like, you never sat there with the character long enough to think, this isn't a kid that's in high school. Like, they're not doing these things. The closest they got was the womanizing player that, every time the coach walks by out of the gym, he's over in the corner talking to a different girl. And it's like, they're not sitting there. Like, he doesn't get caught trying to like have sex with her in school grounds or some crazy thing. Like, it's literally just a different girl, normal conversation. He's not, you don't hear him start to sound like this playboy. It literally are normal conversations that kids would have, and they use it as this joke, but they never let it become this like over the top comedic style. They keep the realism to all these characters throughout the movie, and I think that's what it does a really good job of. And I wonder how much this was always going to be the plan, and how much they definitely had to do it once they brought in Ben Affleck, because you would think when you have a alcoholic construction worker that goes back to find the way back as a high school basketball coach, even though he's never coached basketball before, and we find out the thing that actually drove him to drink is his kid died of cancer, and it's like there's all these like things put on top, and somehow that's the character that definitely has enough parallels with Ben Affleck's life. It's very important that it's that alcoholism, that the fact that his marriage broke down because of it. It's like all of these things match up. And even Ben Affleck can't play basketball, but he was a young phenom that had to deal with success early. And then it's a little bit different. He didn't fall off a cliff, but he definitely had those failures that people tried to put in his face. So he connects with this character in a way is extremely important. I wonder how much the realism, I think that's just how Gavin O'Connor directs, but it is interesting to wonder like how much is like when Ben Affleck connects with these kids, how much did they need to change the script? How much was already there? I don't really know, but it was amazing to see Ben Affleck back in his element, because I think a lot of his recent stuff that's been really good has been very highly produced. This movie, not a high budget. Ben Affleck comes in, and it's just like Uncut Gems. This is a character piece. This rides on Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck isn't good. This movie isn't good. So I'll just start with you. I've been talking for way too long. But Colin, what did you think of Ben Affleck's performance carrying this movie?
Yes. So going into the movie, I mostly wanted to see it because it was a basketball movie. I'm not like a huge Ben Affleck fan. He's obviously really good, but there's a lot of his movies that I have not seen, and I don't have a plan to see them. But I like you kind of alluded to, Affleck was the perfect role for this character, because in the last year or two, he has been open about his divorce with Jennifer Garner and what he's going through with alcohol, and he's been in rehab. So him like preparing for this role felt like I'm sure a lot of emotional things that he's dealing with, because the character in the movie, there's scene after scene where it shows him like he'll have his thermos cup at work and he's hiding what he's drinking, and at home he'll stay up late and open his fridge, and so it's one of those things where, okay, this feels real. Like, this is Ben Affleck, the person, just like struggling to show like how his life is kind of stuck and it's spinning. And he gets the call from his former high school saying, hey, our coach, we're not going to have a coach this season. Why don't you come back? And his first response is probably what anyone else would be in that situation that just is going through a divorce and their life is spiraling out of control. His response is no. And he says, well, think about it. And his response is still no. And then over the course of the next 24 hours or so, he starts to think, well, maybe. And then he starts to have flashbacks to him playing and when his life was in a much better position and kind of having thoughts of like, what would happen if maybe I could be a coach. Maybe the team could turn around. Maybe I could help these kids, that kind of thing. And I thought one of the things that was super funny was the name of the movie, The Way Back, was what the theatrical name was, but originally it was going to be called The Has Been. But it's funny that The Way Back is a lot more optimistic way to look at it than The Has Been. And I think also for Affleck, the actor, seeing his image on a poster called The Way Back is a lot more probably enjoyable than The Has Been. But yeah. I thought he was the perfect role. I thought he did a really nice job. The movie wasn't perfect, but as a sports fan, as a basketball fan, one of the things that I really enjoyed, the high school basketball scenes felt real. It wasn't like some of the where they get 23 and 24-year-olds playing high schoolers. No, the kids looked to be about 18 or so. Wasn't like, so again, I think I appreciated the fact that the high school basketball scenes were pretty good. And I thought that, you're kind of cheering for him because when you find out more about him, you start liking him a little bit more. Like at the beginning, we just learn about this guy that works on a construction site, and obviously his life isn't where it wants to be. So you're starting to root for him, and you kind of have a feeling like this probably won't have a good ending. Like this guy's making decisions that maybe he shouldn't. Again, it's kind of the same thing with not quite on the same level as Sandler and Uncut Gems, but to the point where he starts to realize hey, I should probably be sober. And he starts to sober up. And then, just like in his real life, he has a relapse, and that's when things start to kind of go downhill. But, as the team starting to improve and win more games and ramp up towards a tournament, that's when you see Affleck's character start to mature, but not to the point that everyone in the theater or everyone watching is rooting for. And obviously you see these things don't always end well, and your decisions do have consequences, even if you try to hide them. There was moments where the assistant coach was starting to cut him a little bit of slack and be like, hey, you know what? Let's not do this anymore. There's kids around, you shouldn't be drinking. And then, and Affleck thinks that he can hide it, and he can't. For a certain time, he gets away with it. But when it comes down to it, once the school administration finds out, it's pretty clear and dry. And especially at a Catholic school, there's certain lines you don't cross, and obviously there's consequences for that. But I thought that just kind of watching him progress throughout the movie, and seeing the joy of the team kind of start to buy into what he's doing, I could relate to. And not only because I played high school basketball, but because as a person, as someone who makes some decisions to start to turn their life around, you're rooting for that. They're starting to admit some of their mistakes, but a lot of times your past has a way to find you. So.
Yeah, and I go back to the point you had about the night he decides to become the coach. And that is it's cut in a way that it's all these decisions, all these changes in his mind very quickly. And it's interesting because it's one of the few times in this movie that things move very fast, as opposed to Uncut Gems, where by the end, everything's kind of ramped up. The Way Back's biggest strength is that it takes its time on everything. It doesn't make it seem like this is impossible. And, that kind of decision on one night makes sense. And then as he's joining the team, he's not immediately jumping in and normally there'd be a scene where he'd just start basically showing the kids he doesn't really care. And then he doesn't. He shows up and he coaches, but he's not ready to do that yet. He still is drinking in his office and doing this and that. And nobody really calls him on it, though, other than his little bit of his cursing. That's the only thing that's really pissing him off at the beginning. But it takes a while. And yeah, every movie where they have that scene where it's the coach comes in, he's just I don't really care. And then the kid has to yell at him. And it's no, that's not happening. The kids are going to keep doing what they're doing and nothing's going to change. Why would they be upset? They've already lost a bunch of games and most of them seem fine. They were out there dancing. That was kind of the big thing about the coach was you should take it more seriously and care more. And to have that kind of just those type of scenes in the movie would have ruined it. To have these unnatural things where these kids wouldn't act the way they would really act with the coach, I think was really helpful. There are blow-ups with coaches, like a kid yelling because he's late. And then there are times coaches joke about kicking you off the team. Sometimes they're serious. You don't know. And then when he leaves, like, it is like he blows up, but he's not like sitting there milking it, you know? They've every scene that they did, even the thing, like I said earlier, anything that was in other sports movies, they found a way to let it play out in a realistic way, and they got out of it fast. And the movie slowly builds up to, okay, here's why he became a coach, or, you know, why they had him come back. Here's him kind of why he's deciding to try to give sobriety another shot. Here's why he was an alcoholic in the first place. And I think most of it adds up. If there was anything negative I would take away, it's that a lot of it is kind of a hat on a hat. I think when you start the movie and he's, you know that he was a former high school phenom that flamed out. Okay, why did he flame out? Well, he's an alcoholic. Like, makes sense. You even see the other coach when they face the first coach. The thing that actually sets Cunningham off onto being a good coach is that first taste of a real loss against a real good team. And God, I forget the guy's name that plays the other coach. God, what is he in? Once that coach is an asshole to him, like, that sets off a chain of events. But the coach says, like, oh, I'm surprised you got him out there long enough to practice and get him out of the bar. And it just doesn't make sense, because we find out we were wrong. That's not why he flamed out. He quit playing high school basketball at 18. He didn't become an alcoholic till his son died of cancer in 2017. So it's probably, I don't know, they said like 98 was around the time frame when Ben Affleck was supposed to be in high school. So you have this huge gap. It's like, where would that coach have heard that he became an alcoholic in the last 2 years? You know? So there's these weird things. And it's like, wait, why did he really quit? And, the idea that it feels a little flimsy that his dad just didn't really love him for anything other than basketball. And so he immediately quits, finds a nice woman, has a kid. Everything's great till he gets cancer. Like, wait, what? So they started out with how little you needed to know and then kind of added it. But I feel like once you get into that lane, you need to give me some more on that, because you just threw in 3 different plot devices at me. And that's probably the biggest problem in this movie. I think it's, if we're comparing it to other sports movies, this is amazing. This is a really good job. It stays real. And like you said, with the kids, realistic basketball play. And I'll talk about a little bit of that in a minute about how they got that to actually work. But I think this movie had too many things that tried to stuff in at the end. And if they would have kept it a little bit more simple, it would be a really good movie that I'd compare to Oscar level movies. It's just, once they start adding those things in, it just sucks though, because those extra things they added in is actually when Ben Affleck does the best. Like, I think in the first half of the movie, I don't think I really liked Ben Affleck's performance other than the coaching scenes. And I don't mean this in terms of likability. I mean, like, judging him as an actor, I was like, I don't really buy most of this. The only scene that worked for me was the sister questioning him. And he's like, well, why does she care when I'm in the bar? Da, 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 da. And like, he goes off on his sister. That was the only scene that Ben Affleck did a good job in the first half of the movie, other than when he becomes a coach. And I think he just kind of has that natural rapport with the kids. The second half, though, once the story gets confusing, you're like, wait, really? This is where we're going with this? Those scenes, he does nail the emotion, does such a good job. And the relapse, he probably does better than even the I'm a alcoholic thing. Because that must have been hard, because the scenes of him being an alcoholic or him being dragged home by this guy Doc at the bar. And you're supposed to make it seem like most drunks don't show you they're sad. They're sad at home. And so he has to be happy there, pretending to be an alcoholic, while he's in the middle of trying to actually become sober again in real life. So I don't know if that is why the performance felt hollow in the first half. But yeah, it's that one scene he nails. And then in the second half, I think he pretty much nailed it. So this is another movie. It wasn't the pacing increase and it, brought up, but Ben Affleck's performance improved throughout this movie. And by the end, I was like, damn, that was really good. I wish you wouldn't have thrown so many things at me, because Ben Affleck did amazing. The movie itself was not as good as it should have been. It had so many great pieces, and they did so well with that realism that this could have been a classic. But like I said, with the dad just kind of thrown in and not explain it very well, I think that really brought down the movie, because it undercut everything that I thought was building up, the way I thought this character was built. And it's fine to surprise me, but then it just didn't make sense anymore. Like, all the scenes worked, everything else was real. I don't understand the story of a guy who's perfectly fine for all those years, but gave up basketball, and then now he's using it as a way to get back in. You need a better explanation for why he quit and how he quit. Something that makes me, it probably would have helped me connect with the wife, which I also think her performance was just a little off. Like, they didn't quite have the chemistry to really sell that, which part of that is you want the lack of chemistry. They don't like each other anymore, but I didn't feel that kind of like lost love from now I don't love you anymore because you've been so awful as this alcoholic for a few years. They just didn't connect for me. And I think if you would have explained why she did so well to get him to love life without basketball, that would have worked. And instead, maybe they ran out of time. I don't know what it was, but it just felt forced into the movie to help him connect with the one kid whose father didn't want him to play basketball. And that's really all they used it for. And they didn't explain it well enough. They made that kind of relationship. They undercut it a little bit. And if you fix that part of the movie, this movie's a classic to me. I think they did so much else so well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the elements were strong. I'm glad you mentioned the scene where like his sister finally confronts him, because we don't know how long he's been living by himself, but we know it's been more than a few months. Like, it's been a little while since his wife is now out of the picture. They're trying to file for divorce. They lost their child. And we finally see him, like, he can't really like act out at home. He can, but there's no one to witness it. So when he finally like kind of lashes out at his sister, like, he shows that emotion. And I thought that was really strong. And it kind of shows like, and I think it surprised the sister as well. She's like, oh, he's dealing with a lot more than I thought he was. Like, I know that no one's envious of the situation that he was in as a guy that's dealing with the loss of a child and a woman that doesn't want to be with you anymore for obvious reasons, and you turn to alcohol. And so that scene was strong. A few things about the movie that I struggled with was I didn't know, the movie felt like I didn't know where it wanted to end. Like, they had the last like 10, 15 minutes, I thought like I didn't really know how it was going to end, and it felt like I don't think it knew either. I think it just kind of filmed some different scenes at the end, and there's no perfect way to end it. Whereas Uncut Gems had to end where it ended because of obvious reasons. Like, you know, they have this scene where like obviously Santa's laying on the floor, and then it kind of fades out. It's like, okay, well, that's the end of the movie. On the way back, I think that it kind of struggled with how do we do these last 10 to 15 minutes. And so I thought that the Affleck's performance is great, but the movie itself could have ended 10 minutes earlier, or it could have just had a better way to kind of wrap things up. And then the other thing, this is a little one, but the fact that they make a reference that him getting a scholarship to play at Kansas. I don't know when the last time KU offered a 6'1" shooting guard from a Catholic school. But I don't think Bill Self or Roy Williams have done that. So anyway, that was just me being picky.
Hey, now. I imagine that this character is based off Kirk Heinrich. Timeline's a little off, but I think this is what would have happened to Kirk Heinrich if he didn't really love basketball and his wife convinced him not to play and he just didn't go to KU. That's what I think this is based off of.
So I did get a good laugh out of saying that he had a scholarship offer to play at Kansas. If they would have said like Colorado or New Mexico, I would have been like, okay, yeah.
Well, they wanted you to think he's a phenom, and that's the big thing. Right. And I think that I don't laugh because of the idea that it's at Kansas, because, you know, 6'1", it's like they've had guys that are smaller and maybe they're shooters or this and that. However good you want him to be at basketball. The problem is if you make him that player, he now has that much more to live up to into why did he just quit? Like, this isn't some random thing where everybody comes back and talks to him and like they meet this guy who's now in this kind of depressed state of his life and this and that. Like, there's a longer dilemma. Like, wait, what really happened? Like, that becomes ESPN 30 for 30, you know, like there's just no way that everybody's so casual about it. Like, if it's a knee injury, if it's, you know, there has to be something else there. And, you know, I would have accepted the idea that he was already pushed to alcoholism based on his relationship with his father, and that flamed out his career. And the wife is what came in and stopped him and got him, you know, to build his family, and he stops drinking, but he goes back to drinking when the kid dies. That, once again, that's another way. It's these little things that they could have made this movie better. And, you know, I guess the argument would be with so much realism, that just kind of seems to be a little bit too cliched. But like I said, I think if Gavin O'Connor could take all these other sports cliches and make them work so well. He could have done that in the movie, and it definitely would have helped. That was that little piece in the middle that I think was missing. And if you make that character work better, you make it make a little bit more sense. I think the middle part could have been tightened up. And you mentioned the ending. I was actually fine with the ending. I thought the way it came to an end, there was the idea that you didn't know where it would go, but they landed the plane. And when you have him kicked off the team, you get back to that realism. It's like, they're not just going to be like, whoa, you said you do better. And, it's like, no, like, he's gone. He's not going back to that school. He's done. But the kids aren't going to hate him for it. They're, going to, we're going to do this for coach. And, they go out there and they perform at whatever level they're going to perform at now. And he's off. And, they found a way to give you the kind of blue skies happy ending without it being unrealistic. His happy ending is he's learned, that he needs to get past this. He needs to let the anger go. He apologized to his wife because to that point, he was kind of guilting her and making her seem bad because she had moved on without him. And finally, he had to apologize because, yes, he did this, just like the father says to him when he takes his keys away. It's like, you made this decision. And so when Ben Affleck figures that out, there's no rah, let me come back and, coach again. But the kids have moved on. They're in a good place. He's gone. He's going out and he's picked up the basketball for the first time. And he's getting to at least somehow make the next step forward. He's still on the way back. He's not back yet, but you get the feeling that it is optimistic. It doesn't end. That final scene doesn't say has been, as you see this beautiful vista out there, which I don't know where that is. If that's actually in Torrance, California. Sorry, Colin, I'm not joining you in Colorado. I'm going to Torrance. But that beautiful scene, I don't know where the hell that basketball court is on a cliff edge, but he goes and plays there. He feels great and has the chance to get better. You have that optimism, and they found a way to be happy without it being bullshit. And I was glad they pulled that off. So I was actually happy with the ending. I thought it was the middle there where I could have made stronger connections with the ex-wife. I could have made stronger connections with the player whose father didn't want him to play basketball. Now, it is a double-edged sword because you can lose that realism if you let it play out more, if I find out more about the father. Because those relationships, when a dad is worried that his son is too focused on winning, when he's working all the time and spends the rest of the time with the other kids at home, there's not these Daniel Day-Lewis type performances coming out of the father talking to his kid. It is hush hush. There's a reason that kid doesn't talk that much. He doesn't feel supported from his father, and he's still playing basketball. He's still moving forward, but he's not going to have this blow up scene with his father. And I think that they did it in such a way that I didn't even feel like it was bullshit when the dad finally shows up to the playoff game. I felt like it was just a natural, like, okay, that is the response. Everything was casual. Ben Affleck's character, Jack Cunningham, said the right things to the father that the father took to heart over time. He's not immediately going to turn around and say, I'm so glad my son's playing basketball. Like, it took a bit. Every character had the time to find themselves to get to the ending. So I thought really the ending might have been one of the stronger points for me. So this is our first time. We're at blows here, Colin. We're on opposite sides here. I thought the middle could have been tweaked a little bit to make it better. And then they did find a way that each of these characters by the end worked out great. I did want to go back to you talking about the basketball scenes being real, because that's just as important, is making sure these kids look like they're real high school kids, look like they can really play basketball. And it is interesting the way they cast it. They actually required these kids to try out like it was a basketball team. They had them come in for like different auditions, but the first thing they asked from the different agents was, can you play basketball? Do you want to take a guess whether Chubbs played basketball before doing this, the actor?
I'm going to say yeah.
No, did not. His agent lied. And it was like, oh, he's averaged 17 and 10 and 4 and all this. He's just making stuff up. And so in the end, he just kind of had to fake it till he made it. But he nailed the interview. And he's such a personality. There are those types of people who make the basketball team. They're friends with everybody. Maybe they don't play that much, but they're out there. And then, the other kids, like, they're had to send in a tape of them playing. Then they were brought in for a 5-on-5 game. And like towards the end, a hooded figure walked in and luckily those kids are smart because most of them are like, that's Ben Affleck. That's fucking Ben Affleck. Like nobody else is that tall and is coming to this movie to watch us play. But like they have that performance, and it's gonna still be about the characters, but they had to make sure that on the court it looked real, and they made sure the other players were all basketball players. And amazing job. That's probably the other thing with Gavin O'Connor. He also did, I think, Warrior and then Miracle is on his credits there. He has done an amazing job at doing that in film, which we know is hard. Like I think the joke that Ben Affleck made when he was on what's the NBA show with Shaq? I always forget whether it's like Inside the NBA.
I think so.
So he went on there, and I'm pretty sure Ben Affleck was relapsed for most of the press tour. He seems drunk in every single one. So either it's like he's out of sorts because he's trying to get sober, or he's drunk going to those things. Because it did not seem well. I tried to go back today to watch a lot of them, and then that made me appreciate the movie even more, because I was like, God, he is still in that kind of mode, trying to get past that. Not saying I'm not trying to pick on him and make light of this. I really hope he can figure it out, but it was crazy to watch that happen. But he did say one thing that was really funny on the Inside the NBA, which is like, you can go back and watch Major League, and it's like, Corbin Benson does not look like a baseball player. In baseball, like there are some non-athletic looking baseball players, but even that, like you just look at Corbin Benson, even at that time frame when he was younger, it's like, no, he's not a baseball player. Get the hell out of here. Right. So they did an amazing job making sure that those kids at least were to some level able to do that, to handle themselves on the court, and everything was shot in such a way that, it felt like a really good sports movie from that angle. And I think once you nail that, I don't care what else you do. Sports movies can be really bad and I'll still watch them. To think of how much people Remember the Titans, and I go back and watch it, and other than Denzel being perfect, you just watch it like, this movie is some hammy shit right now. Like there is so much wrong with Remember the Titans that I didn't remember first playthrough, but I still love it, and I'll still go back. I'm never gonna tell people to grow up. The only movie I'll do that on is Space Jam. Like, it's just not good, guys. It wasn't good then. I was 5 and didn't like it. I don't know why you guys thought it was amazing. There's my hot take, Colin. If you want to yell at me right now, go for it.
Lola Bunny in Space Jam is perfect. So I'm going to just make sure everyone knows that.
So there, obviously, the animation side, you get the great cartoons usage in this movie. That's all good. Danny DeVito, but Michael Jordan is awful. He was so bad in that movie acting. You add in all the basketball players that just look awful. They were the aliens. The other ones seemed human because they actually had a personality. Those basketball players, even Charles Barkley, who is walking, he's just a ball of charisma, was awful in that movie. So when people go back and talk about how great it is, like, no. Like when you have to bring in Wayne Knight to bring everything up, and he's the only one that seems normal, you're like, what is happening right now? And even Bill Murray was like the worst version of Bill Murray. Like I'm going on a limb and saying Space Jam just not good at all.
I love Space Jam, but it's a different kind of movie because I don't watch it because it's great. I watch it because it's entertainment. So it's like in a different category.
I don't think it's that entertaining. I think other than the cartoons, which there are other better cartoon movies. I think the interaction with Michael Jordan, the story, like you have a built-in great story that you add in the alien side of it, and you kind of make it work with Michael Jordan going to play baseball and coming back, and this like I love the idea. Everything worked in theory, and then the way they actually set up his family and everything else, like this is the laziest writing I've ever seen. It's not like you can't have lazy writing when you have a guy like Michael Jordan who can't act, and you just put yourself in a hole. I don't know why we're talking about Space Jam this long. This is our sports movie podcast. We'll probably talk about semi-pro for 10 minutes after this, but Space Jam out for me. That's my hottest take I have in my arsenal. Everything else is hot take purposely to upset people. I really don't like Space Jam.
Will you just do me a favor? Go ahead. Let's set a meeting for summer 2021 when Space Jam 2 comes out. We'll compare the two.
I mean, LeBron's already showed he's a better actor than Michael Jordan. So the only real negative of Space Jam 2 is thinking about the opportunity missed. As much as I love LeBron James, he's this huge figure. He's the only one who can carry a movie like that right now. But Steph Curry really should be the guy. When you think of somebody that the kids connect to, they feel like they can be Steph Curry. Obviously we're in a weird place right now where the Warriors have kind of been disassembled, and we'll see what they do when everybody's healthy and going next year. But shouts out to Andrew Wiggins. I think that's a chance for him to get his career back on track. Excited about that. But Steph's the guy. It's just hard to – he doesn't have the star power, but he has the potential to be a bigger deal if Space Jam 2 works, you know? But makes sense to LeBron. If you're going to go Michael Jordan, you got to go to the heir apparent. I know even you is the biggest LeBron James hater in the world. You can't argue with that. Like, we don't have to even have the idea that LeBron's in the territory of Jordan, but there is nobody else. Like, R.I.P. Kobe. But we've had some time to get away from that. We can get real about it again. It's like Kobe's an all-timer, so great. He's barely in the top 10 of NBA players. LeBron James is that guy, and he has shown that he has those acting chops. I assume Colin's got his big take on Trainwreck, and LeBron James wasn't actually that good in it. Fine, but I'm ready for. I will give Space Jam 2 a chance, but I also just think the premise, like, it can work, but now you're kind of like, sequels don't work, and you're going off a sequel off something that I think was overrated to begin with. So you're beating a nostalgia for something that wasn't good. There's no winning there, because even if the movie is good, if it's well done, then you're still like, I just don't feel the same about it. It's bad. We're like, of course, you're freaking 50 and you're comparing to this when you were a child watching. Like, that's what people do all the time with these movies.
Right.
Like, no, you're not going to feel the same way. But there's no chance it'll be good enough to make up for that nostalgia factor for Space Jam 1. So it's a bad idea to make it.
Yeah,
no, we're going to do a podcast on it.
You're right. There's only no way to win. When you compare it to a movie that came out 25 years ago, there's no way that people are going to see it and be like, oh, Space Jam 2 was so much better. Like, so you're right. LeBron's in a tough spot. But I also don't hate the hustle. Like, if someone presents the opportunity to be in a movie called Space Jam 2, where in the original it was Michael, it was number 23, and so I think it'll be kind of entertaining when it comes out. But it is funny when
it is going to make money too.
Right. When they do a sequel 2.5 decades later and expect it to be something good, I think people are going to watch it just because, it's LeBron. But
that's their best hope. It's not just LeBron, but it's like, it is Space Jam 2. So like that sort of what I believe is blind love of the original Space Jam might drive, there will be a section of the audience that are going back to be happy. And you have that chance. It's just hard to predict because we are such a teardown culture. We are going to, there will be some outcry on the internet. The question is whether the Space Jam hardcore fans are going to look at it and be positive, want to defend it. It's sort of like with Star Wars. It's like the fans, the strongest voice in the fan base are so negative that you don't have that protection of the franchise when the new stuff comes out. I think with Space Jam, you don't have that level. Like, nobody's going back to learn the in and outs, the deep dive into the characters of Space Jam 1, Like, obviously, there's different people that like Bugs Bunny and like whatever. But with Star Wars, there's like this investment from people that are going to come in and be very passionate about hating anything new that hurts what they loved growing up. I think with Space Jam, it is just this thing like, oh yeah, I loved it watching. That's so good. And there will be people that when there's negative about it, there'll be people like me that are worse because they're not just going to say I didn't like Space Jam. They're going to be like, Space Jam 2 was stupid, but also Space Jam is stupid. You're going to get Space Jam people like, shut up. No, this is fine. Like, back the hell off. And so it really is just about what that initial confrontation is. Like, if there's enough people that are willing to yell at the critics, something like this can work. It's just so hard to predict. And especially with LeBron James, who's already kind of so controversial. But I think now that he is a real Laker and the city of LA started to support him, and you have the Kobe death be something that now LeBron is kind of like got that connection that we, other than you, Colin, you're the only one left still hating him. I think LeBron kind of has that goodwill. If he would have made the movie 5 years ago, movie's done. Dunzo. Can't work. Now he's closer to getting those people back on his side. Now that he is 17 years in and still an MVP candidate, now I think he can push that to the next level. But, it's hard to predict on any movie, let alone something like this. You're right. 20 years later, not necessarily a great plan to try to make that sequel.
If the rest of this NBA season gets canceled, it'll be 2 years in a row without LeBron in the playoffs. And that brings me more joy than I'd like to admit. But shout out, Lakers finished, 11th in the West last year? Nice job, LeBron. Keep it up.
What'd they finish this year? The season's over. What'd they finish?
He's playing really good.
What did they finish?
He's playing really good at his.
Is he averaging like 10 assists a game? Is that happening?
He's doing a great job. So that's
not a great job. It is the greatest season at that many years in the league. There's an argument for age-wise. I don't know how many great people at 34 and 35 were still killing it. But the only one who even competes in terms of age and years is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which he doesn't get nearly the respect he should get. But there's nobody else. Like that. This is unprecedented, Colin. It's to the point that you are all alone on your island of LeBron hate. You're the only guy left.
3 rings is just not enough for me.
Yeah?
I'll be impressed when he gets 4th, 5th, or 6th. So
okay.
He has the same as Steph. Okay, that's cool. Like they both have good careers.
Yeah. Robert Horry. Robert Horry is just one behind Bill Russell, or two behind, 3. I think Bill Russell's 11. I think Horry's is 8. So you're right. Robert Horry, second best player in NBA history.
I have some
nailed that take.
I have some qualities that aren't great. One of them is I'm stubborn. Like I just, LeBron's really good at losing the finals. Like if that's something you want to be good at, then yeah, he's really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, better than the people who keep losing before the finals. So
right.
He's pretty darn good. But yeah, you're right. Robert Horry, second best basketball player ever. That's I'm quoting Colin. It's on his Facebook. You know those quotes that nobody else uses? It says Robert Horry, second best basketball player in history.
Never said that.
You said that. You just said it. I heard you. Clear as day. You made the criteria, and I'm just extrapolating from that criteria on what your opinions are on basketball.
I do hope. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back. I do hope we get it. I hope the season continues in the next few months, even if it's in an empty arena, just so that LeBron can lose in the finals again. So, shout out Milwaukee.
Hey, if he's losing, it's to the Clippers. So you calm down over there.
You're right. The Clippers do have a better chance than the Bucks. I agree.
Clippers, Lakers, one of them has to win. And I know you hate LeBron, but I need one of the Morris twins to get that ring. So, like, I got to have it. I don't care which LA team. One of them has to win.
Yeah. LeBron, let me just say this. LeBron makes it so perfect. Like, leaving Cleveland once, I thought was great. Leaving Cleveland twice, I mean, come on. Like, that's just so fun. Like, just rip their hearts out. Like, and I'm sure no one in Cleveland cares because they have the championship, but leaving your homegrown city twice, like, that's, for me, that's entertaining.
Maybe
like, that's fun.
Maybe Dan Gilbert shouldn't be such a terrible owner. Not that hard.
Yeah. But going to LA, I think it'll be fun. I'm excited to see what he can do with the Lakers. But I do kind of get a good kick out of. I do hope it's an all Los Angeles finals, Western Conference Finals, whether it's 2020 or 2021, whenever we resume sports again. So yeah, shout out to Kawhi.
This was a sad year because basketball was super exciting, and I had just changed jobs. Not to get too much into personal life, but I had finally gotten my job as a sports writer out in Liberty, Missouri, out in North KC. And based on my schedule, I was like, oh, I could watch sporting events again. Like, you would think, being a sports writer, you are working during the time of sporting events. Like, somehow I had more time for real sporting events at this job than I did previously. And then this whole thing goes down, and I'm just sitting there like, I was so ready to watch the final stretch of Giannis holding on to one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. To have it just seems like people are so mad about players going to these top teams, but it's like we have these juggernaut teams that I'm so excited for the playoffs. Like, there's no bad matchups that happen, especially on the Western Conference side. And I was just so excited to see this go down, and particularly with the Clippers, where it's like Lakers are better than the regular season. Kawhi plays every other game and is a monster. He is the LeBron kryptonite, and I was just so ready for all of this to happen. And it ends, which is smart. I'm not saying it shouldn't. Like, this is the right decision. It's just so sad that it's happening, and we're like, I know people are already worried about, like, is NFL going to come back, and like, this could stretch out really far. So we don't know the timeline on a lot of this stuff. But man, I was just so sad, particularly with the NBA, because it was like right as that's happening. And for my job, like I was in the middle of covering like teams in the state tournament, and some of them didn't. All of my teams end up losing. Like the one team that was left in the tournament, they lost the final day before Missouri finally closed it down, which was like 3 days after the rest of the world did. Missouri is not ready to give up on sports right now. So yeah, like that sort of weird, like stopping that, and then I was ready to go into the spring season. Like I had to learn these teams. Like I cover four schools. Had to learn all these players in the final 2 weeks as they're all entering into conference, district, state play. And I was like, all right, I got this. I'm ready to go into spring, like knowing all the teams, knowing them at the beginning. And then like, nope, season's not happening. And now I'm just sitting here like just a year or two late, you know, like maybe next year I could start getting going on my dream. But it's still been fun. And I know right now with it would be great to have sports. That's the worst part, is when you have these terrible, whether they're tragedies, whether they're things like this, where it's, the world has been upended, and usually we turn to sports. And, you know, the closest comparison we have is 9/11, you know, just shutting down NFL. It's the only thing that's ever shut the NFL down. To have the sports world shut down for something that it's like, we don't know when it'll end, and we're sitting here in our homes. If we had sports to watch, it'd be so much better. The best part about sports is the worst part about it now, which is, one, yeah, you can't have them out there in this, same as we can't be around each other. You also, there's no replay value. Like, even if you love sports and you can go over film and whatnot, but I can't just turn on last year's games and be like, yeah, I totally don't know what happened. This is great. I have the same passion right now. It's like, you can't. Like, so now you're left doing weird things, and the only thing to fill that void is sports movies. And so hopefully there are some more out there. I guess I can go back and try to rewatch, but I doubt too many will be as good as The Way Back. I'm hoping that this is the type of movie that can change what sports movies look like going forward. I mean, at the very least, like, for all of its problems, that part I hope is what sticks, is that they found a way to make this movie realistic, realistic without being gritty. I think that's where a lot of people go to say realistic, is they make things gritty. This was, other than the excessive cursing and the alcoholism and the sadness of that, it is a movie that you could watch with family without needing to tell kids to go step out for a couple scenes. I think the way that they were able to pull off the realism without needing to go to that level, with it just being not a feel-good story, but a family-appropriate story, to do that without needing to take it to the extra gear, to seem realistic. I was amazed by those aspects. So don't let my negativity earlier undercut anybody who wants to watch this movie. Totally worth watching. Totally one of the best sports movies I've watched in a long time. And then also Uncut Gems for its relation to sports. There's a lot of cool stuff happening right now. Sports movies can be really, really good if we hold them to a higher standard. So stop going to bad movies. Stop going to whatever the newest version of Coach Carter is, and order things like this on Amazon. So that's my best. That's the closest I got to a finish to this show. Colin, anything you want to tell our audience before we get on out of here?
Yes. So I think for me, it's just, I enjoy like a movie that can suck me in, and I care about something, whether it's one of the characters or what's going to happen next. I have to care about something. And, of the 15 or so movies I've seen this year, there's 5 or 6 that are below average or average. There's 5 or 6 that are right there above average. And then there's 3 or 4 that are great, that I would say are kind of in that category that I would say, like, hey, like, when you get a chance, you should see this one. So I have Uncut Gems as my second favorite movie I've seen this year, and I have The Way Back at number 3. And they're only behind Parasite, which I thought was just one of the best movies I've ever seen, just because it did something I had never seen before, and it was super creative. But I mean, I know that's really high praise, but I would encourage you. I think that, we talked about Sandler's performance and Affleck's performance, and it's just kind of a bit way. You want to keep watching. You want to find out, like, are they going to get their life together? Like, are they going to make the right decision? Probably not. But like you said earlier, you can relate to it because they're human. So lots of really strong qualities, but they were carried by the performance that had to be carried by. Otherwise, the movies wouldn't have worked. So I was definitely a big fan. But yeah, if you have not seen Uncut Gems or The Way Back, like they are enjoyable. And just for fun, can we call Uncut Gems a sports movie?
Yeah,
because of Garnett's presence.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's
So.
without a doubt. I mean, it's adjacent to sports, but no, it's a sports movie. It's right up there. And yeah, if you can do things like this and make it work and find ways for Kevin Garnett to be in the right role, like he nailed it. I could listen to Kevin Garnett talk for days about anything. He's so entertaining, and not even in like the Charles Barkley way of trying to get a rise out of you. Kevin Garnett is just a very interesting person. So yep, that's what we have for this sports movie podcast of the Q crew on the Tell Me More podcast. I was thinking we'd probably wait till after to actually decide where to go next and what to talk about next. But I do want to know what's in your queue. You said make sure to watch Uncut Gems and watch The Way Back. But I assume most of the people that have listened to this have already watched it, and that's why they jumped in. So what should our listeners, what should our 12 people in the audience decide to watch on Netflix? What's currently on your to-do list?
So I'm definitely a little bummed about like all the theaters being closed and not getting to experience the same movies during the spring you usually do. But a lot of those platforms, Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, are bringing movies home so you can watch them there. Right now, I'm challenging myself to watch more TV series.
HBO, 500 hours of programming on there. So I assume you've probably watched a lot of those shows that they actually brought out from behind the paywall, but a lot of good stuff to watch.
So right now I am in seasons 1, just starting Ozark and Barry and Dave. Ooh. And if you have not started Dave yet,
I've not started Dave. I've only heard positives. I know I need to. I just know that I'll lose some days if I do. What episode do they have? All of the season, or how?
So there's a new episode every Thursday. So okay. I think they've released 5 or 6 episodes so far, but the show just debuted like March 4th, like within the last few weeks. So it's brand new. But it's, in my opinion, which who knows what that is worth. It's the funniest show I've seen on TV in a long time. So, but I'm a fan who enjoys hip hop. But I think Lil Dicky's performance in Dave is he kind of wrote the show himself. He did a lot of the stuff himself, and it's very, very entertaining. So that's what I got for right now.
All right. And yeah, he's the type of guy. Lil Dicky is obviously it's a little bit of a caricature of being a rapper, so obviously that lends itself to a comedy show. And just from the kind of there's no scenes to know how good it is, but just kind of the creativity of the trailer that they have is like, okay, I want to see what this guy can do, and we'll see. And I think, what channel is that supposed to be on? Like, it's on Hulu.
So it's on FXX. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I was trying to think of the different shows that are usually on those type of channels that people don't end up watching. If you like Dave and you like kind of the feel they have there, have you seen Man Seeking Woman? With
I've only heard of it. Yeah.
It's got Jay Baruchel and Eric Andre. And it's kind of like a deconstruction of the rom-com type of tropes, but also to absurdist ends. Like, it's an absurdist comedy with the first episode he goes on a blind date with a troll. It's literally a troll. So that's kind of the setup, and I swear to God, I don't know if you'll like it, but you can figure out from the first episode whether you will. And then yeah, it's got like 3 seasons of it that are pretty darn solid, and I would put that in the same camp of like, if you put it in front of the average person, they probably won't like it. I think a few of us more pompous types probably would definitely enjoy that. I bet I'll enjoy Dave. I just don't know when I'm going to get around to it. I'm trying to think if I have a list of stuff. Mostly my list is just the list you sent me of things that I'm trying to figure out whether to watch. I did watch what's the Lost Girls. That one really solid. I forget the actress that plays Holly in The Office is the mom in that movie, that her daughter was a sex worker that ends up going missing, and she's fighting to make sure that the police don't just forget about it, because often that happens when sex workers end up going missing. It's kind of like, well, yeah, what did you expect? And so she fights to make sure that case gets finalized, based on a true story that's uber sad, but it was definitely worth the time on Netflix. The other one you threw in that was going to be similar, which if you end up watching Lost Girls anytime soon, that might end up being our next podcast. You also threw on Unbelievable. I would say that's one I watched. It is unbelievable. Like in terms of watching it, like it's the type of story that is sadly all too common. But when you're like listening and you're seeing it happen, you're just like, how is this possible? And it's like, it's actually very possible. It happens a lot, sadly.
Right.
Not the uber specifics of what happens with that case, but just kind of the way that sex assaults and different rape cases fall through the cracks in different police departments. And that show is it captures that. Great performances from each of the characters. And once again, I forget the names of most of the people that are in it. The main one is Toni Collette, who's really good. And then I don't even think I ever knew the name of the other lead. I do know that she was randomly Schmidt's girlfriend on New Girl. And then I was like, oh, that's Schmidt's girlfriend, like every time I see her, but she's actually really good in a lot of other stuff. And yeah, like all the performances in that show, really good. So that might end up being the next one, because we're trying to find a couple shows, couple movies to watch, talk about all at one time that have something in common. We're going to do these kind of planned out, podcast, and that seems like probably a pretty good next step. But we're going to have to go look at the list. We're going to have to figure things out, and we're definitely going to be back. We're going to do this much more often, particularly as we're stuck in social isolation.
Right.
We're going to be on here on Zoom and talking it out. So I'm excited about that. But that is it. That's all we have for this episode of the Q Crew on the Tell Me More podcast. Later, folks.